Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Marcus and I'm a graduate teaching assistant at Fort Hays State University. My job is to teach two sections of public speaking class. Okay, and most of my students are American students and they are almost all freshmen. Okay, so my job is to teach them how to have a good public speaking skill. And for every one of us, it is very important to have strong public presentation skills. For example, when you're in school, you need to be able to present your project at the end of the semester, right? And for a lot of graduate students, they need to have research papers, but they not only need to write research papers, they also need to have strong communication and public presentation skills to make sure that other people know what their research project is all about. Okay, and after we graduate, we are all gonna have to go through job interviews, right? And strong public presentation skills are a great tool for you to promote yourself. You gotta make sure that you are a good team player to your future employees, and you need to be able to present your company, to represent your company to other people in the society. So these are the things that you need to be able to achieve once you graduate or in school. So it is very essential and important for you to have strong public presentations. Okay, so today I'm gonna cover the three things that you need in your public presentation or a public speech. Okay, so the first thing we need to know is, what does a public speech look like? Okay, there are three things that you need to include in your speech. I think for the most part, a public speech is similar to an English composition, but it's just kind of different. Okay, so there are three parts. The first part is called introduction, and it makes up 25% of the entire speech. And the second part is called the body, which makes up 60% to 65% of the entire speech. And then for conclusion part, it's usually 10% to 15%. Okay, so you need to have all of these three parts in your public presentation or any kind of public speech. Okay, even though different things make up different proportions, but it's very important that you treat them equally. Okay, you treat them with all your heart and soul. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is introduction. Okay, so there are actually six things that you need to have in your introduction. The first thing is called attention getter, and second thing is called purpose and thesis statement, and then credibility and relational connection, and then number four is orientation phase. Number five, impact of the topic and speech, and number six, enumerated preview. Okay, but don't worry about it. We're gonna go into details about every one of these things. Okay, so because body is one of the most important part of your speech, and it makes up 60% to 65%. So body is kind of like the major part. Okay, so we're gonna start with the body first. So in your body, you need to have three main points. Okay, so for your entire speech, you need to have one thesis statement. Okay, that one thesis statement is about everything that you want to talk about throughout your speech. But for that one thesis statement, you have to have three main point to support this thesis statement. Okay, so you are encouraged to have 2 to 3 main points. Okay, so for each of your main point, you need to have different subpoints. It can be statistics, it can be details or little stories that can support your main point. Okay, so basically you have 2 or 3 main points in your body, and then you have 2 or 3 subpoints to support each main points. Okay, and conclusion. So there are several things you need to include in conclusion as well. There are 6 things actually. The first one is called wrap up signal, and then restatement of thesis, summary of main points, audience motivation, relational reinforcement, and clincher statement. Okay. Okay, so for the body part, the body is the part of the speech in which an argument is developed and presented. there are four principles that you need to be aware of when you are delivering a body. So the four principles are called the points principle, the unity principle, the balance principle, and the guidance principle. Okay, so what is the points principle? Okay, so you need to have three main points to support your thesis statement. And in order to have good main point, you need to have 2 to 3 subpoints to support that main point. Okay, so for each main point, you must have different subpoints. Okay, so this is called points principle. So unity principle. Unity principle is about all of your main points should be relevant and related to your main thesis statement. Okay, for example, I have a bad example. Okay, so your thesis statement is about the treatment of a disease, right? So for your main point number one, you talk about treatment A. Main point number two, you talk about treatment B. But for main point three, you talk about the symptoms of the disease. So the way you design the main point three is wrong because the symptoms of the disease is not related to the treatment of the disease. So they are not related. So you should not make your main point three to be the symptoms of the disease. It should also be some other kind of treatment for that disease. Okay, so this is the unity principle. The balance principle. So the points of the body should be relatively equal in scope and importance. Okay, so you need to pay equal material to each main point. So and also you need to devote equal time to different main point. Okay, so if you use 1 minute to talk about main point one, 1 minute to talk about main point two, then you need to use 1 minute to talk about main point three as well. You cannot just give 20 seconds for main point three. You need to devote equal time and material to each of your main points. Okay, guidance principle. So a guidance principle is about a speaker has to guide and direct the audience members throughout the entire speech. Okay, so in a public speaking, it's not only about you talking about yourself or talking about whatever you want to talk about. You are also developing a relationship with the audience members. Okay, so if you want to develop a relationship, then it's your responsibility to make sure that the audience members are able to follow you. Okay, if they are confused, then they're not following you. Okay, so you must make sure that they know what you're talking about. They're interested in your speech. Okay, so one of the ways that you can use to guide your audience members is to use transitional words. Okay, so there are different words that you can use as transitional words, such as firstly, secondly, thirdly, and in conclusion. Okay, and you can also use to begin with, then, at last. So the thing about transitional words in public speaking is that you need to make it as simple as possible, because when you're writing a English composition, right, you need to show off how many vocabulary you have, how awesome your words choice are, right? But for speech, all you need to do is to make sure that the audience members can follow you. Okay, if you use something too fancy, then the audience members are going to get confused. So my suggestion to you is to make the transitional words as easy as possible. Then you can make sure that the audience members are following you. Okay? Okay, organizational patterns. So there are several ways that you can use to organize your main points. Okay, so there are actually 6 organizational patterns that you can use for your body. Okay, you can use chronological pattern, spatial pattern, causal pattern, question answer pattern, topical pattern, problem solution pattern. So these are the available organizational patterns that you can use for your public presentation. Okay, so the first kind of pattern is called chronological pattern. So this is how you arrange your main points based on time sequence. For example, if you want to deliver a speech about how to make a hamburger, right, then you got to make sure that you are talking about this whole process according to the time sequence. Okay, so for main point number 1, it should be what you start with, right? And main point number 2, step 2. Main point number 3, step 3. So these are how you use chronological pattern to organize your main points. Okay, you can also talk about your life, right? In a chronological pattern. For example, you can talk about what happened to you when you were in grade school for main point number one. And for main point number two, you can talk about what happened to you in middle school. And for main point number three, you can talk about what happened to you in high school or what's happening to you now. So you just organize the whole main points by the time sequence. Okay. Spatial pattern. Spatial pattern is that you organize your main points by their physical locations. So, for example, if you want to talk about a building, so the introduction of the building is the main thesis about your speech, then it should be like, main point number one, what's going on the first floor? Main point number two, what's going on the second floor? Main point number three, what's going on the third floor? So this is how you use a physical location, physical relation to organize your main points. Causal pattern. Causal pattern is about cause and effect. So there are a lot of things in the world that one thing causes another, right? So for your public speaking, for your body, you need to have a cause and an effect. So eating too much hamburgers cause diabetes. I mean obesity, right? So you can make your main point number one to make it about the fact of eating fast food, and then main point number two, you can make it to be like the a negative effect about eating too much fast food. So main point number one is the cause, it's the reason, and main point number two is about the consequences, the effect. Okay, so this is how you use a causal pattern to organize your main points in the body. Okay, so the next one is called the question answer pattern. So you use question as a way to start your main point. Okay, so main point number one is actually a question. Main point number two is actually a question. And then for the rest of your main point number one, main point number two, you answer that question. So the thing with question is once you ask a question, then you are going to make the audience members think, right? They're going to, even though they are just sitting out there listening to you, but if you talk about a question, then they're going to become interested in you because they will be trying to answer that question. Okay, so when they are trying to answer that question, then it's very likely that they're gonna think with you. Okay, they're gonna try to answer that question, and when they think, it'll be easier for you to talk, to explain things, and it is a great way to get the audience members interested in your main points. Okay, so today I have talked about the principles that you need to include for your body paragraph and the different patterns that you can use to organize your main point. Okay, so in my next lecture, I'm gonna talk about the other things you need to be aware of for your body paragraph, and then what you need to have in your introduction, what you need to have in the conclusion. Okay, thank you guys.